Welcome, and thanks for joining us for today's presentation, 30 Things You Can Do to Enhance Your Firm's Online Presence in Just 30 Minutes. I'm Fred Cohen, founder and CEO of Amicus Creative Media. Now, we've designed each of these points to be applicable for virtually any small firm with an online presence, and we hope you can apply as many of these as possible to supercharge your firm's online marketing presence. Number one, before you start, you need to sort of step back and try to determine what the purpose of the website is. Are you trying to attract new clients? Or is it going to be what we call a referral validation website? Are you trying to appeal to a very narrow audience or a broad audience? Now, you need to have consensus within your firm before you start working on the concept and the messaging. If you're at a firm with a number of partners, too many inputs trying to appease everyone's likes and dislikes can lead to what we call design by consensus, which invariably leads to websites that are bland and uninspiring. So it's a great idea to designate a decision maker, preferably with veto power, that can liaison with the design firm that you're working with. Number three, what makes you different? What's your unique selling proposition? Is it specific education that you have, experience? Is it some sort of a proprietary process or special capability, contacts, connections that you might have that will give your clients an advantage? A couple of examples. We have a client, Randall Brett in New Jersey, who prior to practicing law was actually head of HR at a pretty sizable company. And the background and experience that he attained in that role brings a lot of value to the table when he's representing employees. Similarly, we have a client, Lad Hirsch, who is a business litigation attorney. He himself has owned a number of businesses and has served on boards. And again, that perspective it can translate into more effective representation for his clients, and it's something that they make a point to highlight on their website. And in fact, you need to go beyond your website. Obviously, within your website, you want to focus on it on your homepage, on applicable practice areas, your profile, but also just on third-party websites, your social media presence as well. Okay, taglines. You don't necessarily need to have a tagline, but if you do, number one, we recommend that you avoid cliches. Number two, keep it short. Taglines are most effective that way. Rule of thumb is to keep it under 6 words. Some concepts you might want to think about is, again, any competitive advantage that you might have. You can use it to relate to your client goals, your values, and you kind of want to make it as broad as possible. Don't be too specific or too narrow, and make it aspirational, something that you aspire to do, in terms of how you approach your work with your clients. And finally, if you can, try to make it memorable. One way to do that is to use alliteration, though you don't want to be too cute with that either. Number 5, how benefit focused is your website? Now, businesses or business owners have a tendency to kind of over focus on features as opposed to the benefits. As the saying goes, features tell and benefits sell. In the context of law firms, features are education or experience, and the benefits are really what it means for your client's legal problem. So, for example, the benefit of experience is increased compensation for your client's injury or less time-consuming trial process. Now, to that end, you always want to keep the client's perspective in mind. And this means that virtually all the content on your website has to directly relate to your clients and how your firm can address them. Number 7, design. Now, this is an issue that's very near and dear to my heart because I really enjoy beautiful, unique, captivating designs. But in addition to their aesthetic value, design really does serve a very functional purpose. We're very visual beings. We judge books by their cover, despite what we may say, at least subliminally. Seth Godin, who is a very well-known business guru, he talks about this concept of a purple cow in the context of transforming one's business by standing out. And, you really want to be that purple cow in the field of, Holsteins. And you want to avoid that kind of like templated WordPress kind of
blog look that has these just white background stacks of rectangles on top of each other, and that doesn't do anything to kind of help you stand apart from your colleagues. Okay, firm identity and logos. A couple of things to keep in mind. Again, being unique is critical. Avoid being the Holsteins. With respect to the design, avoid something that's overly intricate. The thumbnail test you want to keep in mind is that if you shrink it to the size of a thumbnail, is it still recognizable, or does it rely too much on so many, small intricate details? Another test is the black and white test, which is, is the logo functional in black and white mode, or again, does it rely on colors and gradients to really work? And finally, and perhaps most importantly, you want to embrace visual tension. This is when, for example, something is not centered, or saying something is a visual element is hanging off an edge, or leaking out, or overlapping in a kind of an artistic way. Avoid the temptation to kind of have your designer, make it, make them separate or centered or more rational. Okay. So once you've decided what your unique selling proposition is, you want to highlight that in strategic places throughout your website. Obviously, the place you want to focus on the most is what we call the above the fold, or the section of your website that is visible once it loads initially on a browser. You also might want to give some focus to it at the bottom of the site. We've noticed from studying heat maps is that's a place that gets a good amount of attention in addition to the very top of the website. Okay, domain names. Certain things you want to keep in mind. Number one, search engine optimization. Keywords related to your practice areas. Don't make it too narrow. You don't want to pigeonhole yourself, but try to also include perhaps words related to your geographic location. Don't make it too long. That's obvious. It is getting a little harder, but you have to be a little bit more creative to try to find a domain name that is available. If your last name is like McConaughey, and I'm sure people have more difficult last names than that, try to avoid that, because you don't want to leave people guessing, and you don't want potential clients going to the wrong website. And finally, the ending does matter. You want to select a .com name. The test that I have for that is, if you're passing by the scene of an accident, and you give out your domain name to a potential client, you don't want to tell them to go to igortheinjurylawyer.org. By the time that person goes and visits your website, they'll forget the last portion and they'll just put in .com. Okay, you want to go ahead and claim any local listings that you have, or that you have an opportunity to sign up for. So this includes those provided by search engines such as Google, Yahoo, and Bing. And this gives you a phenomenal opportunity to come up on the first page on what are called local results. Those are the ones with the map and the corresponding pins on the search result page. And other kinds of profiles include things like Yelp, or other social media profiles like LinkedIn and Facebook. And you want to try to complete them to the best of your ability, because the more complete that they are, the better opportunity you have to rank, for those local listings. Okay, number 12, call to action. This is just a very simple thing to do that'll make it easier for site visitors to contact you. Unfortunately, visitors are lazy, so you want to make it ridiculously easy for them to reach you. And essentially, by a quick glance, your phone number or any contact forms should be immediately visible. Okay, number 13, you want to use contact forms instead of email addresses to allow users to contact you online. And that's for a number of reasons. Number one, you get to control the input by asking specific kinds of questions, like their contact information. You'd be surprised how many people would leave them out. Number two, analytics. The forms that we provide our clients, called smart submissions, for example, they will provide information as to where that visitor came from, what pages within your website they visited before initiating contact, etc. You could have it programmed to go to multiple visitors, and if the visitor that's on a particular computer, they click on the email address, what might happen is that like the local Outlook installation may come up, which may not even be installed, doesn't belong to that user, or they might have to open up another window to go to their Gmail account, log in, copy and paste the email address. So it becomes very clunky, and it just kind of puts another roadblock in front of a potential visitor to your website. Okay, very important practice area content. You really should have a page that's dedicated to each of your practice areas, instead of just kind of like a bulleted list of what you practice. You have to show that you're serious about your practice. You can't just say, hi, I'm Fred, I'm a great lawyer, please hire me. And this doesn't just mean for one major practice group to just have one page. So an estate planning attorney would have wills, trusts, incapacity planning, etc. Different chapters of bankruptcy for bankruptcy attorneys, or deportation defense and different types of visas for immigration attorneys. This also, incidentally, has the added benefit of providing much better exposure to search engines. Okay, long tail search. I'm not sure if you've heard of this phrase, but more and more users are actually putting in relatively complex search queries into search engines. Google is estimating that about half of the searches conducted now are comprised of those types of searches. And previously, it was difficult for the artificial intelligence of the search engines to kind of understand the questions and be able to serve up related pages. But since Google did its Hummingbird update a while back, the content and context understanding mechanism of the search engines were significantly improved, and that opens up a lot of opportunities. So one way to kind of get better exposure for those types of searches is to have very kind of narrow content, preferably on a separate page. And you want to focus on quality versus the quantity of the content. You don't need to write a significant amount, but just address specific narrow questions directly. And to that point, in terms of long tail searches, a great way to be able to come up on search results for those types of searches is to have an FAQ section. So if you want to be inspired as to what questions to provide, first of all, you want to group them by practice area. But if you're ever in a client meeting, just have a separate sheet of paper. If the client poses any kind of question that you might not have on your website, just make a note of it and update your website later with a general answer. Okay, building links to your website. This is essentially called off-site search engine optimization. It's a way for other websites to give your website authority. So you want to have quality links going back to your website. This could be from bar association profiles that are online, maybe charities you're involved with, local business groups, chambers of commerce. If your law school has an alumni page, take advantage of it. If you're not sure of other opportunities, you can try Googling yourself. You'd be surprised where you're listed, and you might be able to contact the operators of those sites, and update your profile with a link back to your website. Again, you want to when you're thinking about links to your website, quality is much more important than quantity, and you want to avoid what's called an unnatural link profile. So if you have a friend that has a pizzeria, don't ask them to link back to your website. I mean, that's a completely different kind of a business and practice, and too many of those types of links can actually hurt you. Okay, Google Analytics. This is a terrific tool to diagnose issues with your website's content and structure, and it can tell you all sorts of really neat stats on bounce rate, which is essentially what percentage of visitors visited the first page of your websites but didn't continue browsing and they exited. What is the page that users leave on the most? That's called the exit page. So if they're browsing around and they reach a particular page and then they stop browsing, now that could just be a fine exit page, maybe like a contact form. But if it's another type of page, that might give you some indication as to what might be issues in terms of attracting potential clients. Time visited their website, on your website, or referral traffic. What are the websites that are driving traffic to yours? Okay, number 19, Google Webmaster tools. Now, Google Webmaster Tools are similar in some ways to AdWords, but they kind of diagnose more technical issues with your website. They also kind of allow you to communicate in certain ways to Google. It's usually the other way around. It's usually Google communicating with you. If they find something that's questionable in terms of your search engine tactics, you might receive a warning there. But you also have an opportunity to control how your website is viewed on search engine results. Okay, number 20, mobile websites. I don't have to say how important this is. Huge number of users online are now accessing the internet through their phones, and that's to find service providers such as attorneys. So you want to make sure that your website is optimized for their use, and this means that the site has to load fast, the font size has to be the right way, so don't have to constantly squeeze and pinch and navigate right and left if it's maybe not wrapping around. And you want to make the navigation easy so that the menu and navigation buttons can easily be pressed with a thumb without accidentally pressing the buttons adjacent to them. And since it's a phone, you should have a very prominent button right on there that can queue up your firm's telephone number, and that way your a visitor can quickly contact you. Now, there are generally two different or two main approaches to enhance your site's visibility. One is, of course, SEO, search engine optimization, and the other is search engine marketing, also referred to as pay-per-click. Pay-per-click essentially buys you a position above the search results. They're in the designated ad positions on top, and that's essentially a bidding mechanism. So each set of keywords has a market price, and if you want to be um, displayed higher than a competitor, you would just bid higher for those set of keywords. The benefit of a paid advertising campaign is that the results are virtually immediate, and you can start receiving traffic sometimes as quick as the first day. Whereas organic is much more of a long process where you have to establish credibility with the search engines. You have to build a lot of great content, and requires a lot of patience. And for certain practice areas, it just will take a very long time, especially if they're also in a very competitive geographic location. So, a personal injury attorney in New York City, that just created a website. It might take a very long time for that user to start ranking on the first page, for important keywords. Whereas a paid campaign might be the better kind of investment of resources for that firm. Okay, attorney profiles. Again, you always want to keep the client's perspective in mind. You want to try to avoid bullet lists. You can use them for maybe certain things at the bottom, but try to write it in paragraph format. Again, talk about how, any kind of special experience or education you have. Just take the extra step of mentioning explicitly how that can relate to potential clients and how that will help you do a better job for your clients. It's a great way to build rapport with your audience of clients and prospects is to mention some personal details. And if you're a member of a particular organization and you mention it, you want to highlight how your membership in that organization specifically helps you serve your clients better. 23. So you have a spectacular website. You want to go ahead and flaunt it. So make sure that you have it everywhere, from business cards, stationery, email signatures, and even the greeting on your voicemail. Okay, number 24. Now, top of mind marketing is a huge issue, but essentially you want to be remembered by your contacts, frankly, to be retained or referred when the opportunity arises. So this happens, when you meet a fellow colleague at a CLE, or you have a prospect comes to you, maybe they don't retain you right away. You've had past clients, that you work with, but you've lost touch. A terrific top of mind marketing campaign would be a newsletter campaign. That's assuming that you have permission to email those individuals, and you send them high quality newsletters, and that allows you to kind of stay top of mind and hopefully when the opportunity arises, they'll either retain or refer you.
Now, on the subject of top of mind marketing with respect to your website, you might have certain visitors that may not be quite ready to retain you. They don't initiate contact, though they might click on a special report that you have on your website, and in that process, opt in to an email newsletter, which, as they continue to receive it over time, again, you'll stay top of mind and maybe you'll get to retain them, or they might even refer you to a friend or colleague.
26, ethics issues. So as you're working on your firm's marketing, you want to be aware of ethics pitfalls. Now most states have adopted the model rules of professional conduct. You want to be careful when claiming expertise. If you're mentioning any kind of past results, you want to mention that it doesn't necessarily indicate an ability to attain a future result, and you want to make sure you have disclaimers regarding not establishing any kind of attorney-client privilege. If you have a request a consultation form on your website, it's a great place for you to put information about the process of working with your firm. If you offer a free consultation, you should mention what the contours of that are, and if there are any forms or documents that need to be brought along with the consultation, you should state that there. Number 28. We actually get this question a lot. Can you ever have too much content? First of all, we're assuming that you're having non-duplicate content where every page on your site is unique and it's actually good, high-quality content. So, and if that's the case, it really becomes an issue of structuring your data the right way. Are you answering a question? Would you put it in an FAQ section? How is that organized? A blog, more often than not, is a great place to put content because it has built-in mechanisms for you to organize the information by categories or by author or by date. And the way the pages get posted and structured are very search engine friendly by default. So by all means, if you have something valuable to express, not a problem adding it to your site. Just make sure you do it in a way that's easy to consume by potential readers. Okay, number 29. A couple of things to think about with respect to usability. First of all, font size. You want to make it readable. If you're not sure which size to pick, probably slightly larger is better than smaller. But another aspect of fonts which is not given much attention is the vertical line spacing. You want to make sure that it's at least 1 1/4 or 1 1/2 vertical line spacing, which makes it a lot easier to read on a screen. With respect to menus, if you can, try not to have too many menu options. If you have submenus, you shouldn't have an additional level of submenus below those. Those are very difficult to navigate. And a lot of times as you're trying to kind of navigate horizontally to access that sub menu, the cursor veers off and you lose where you are. I'm sure it's happened to all of us. So definitely keep those things in mind for your visitors as you're building out your website.
And finally, as you're working on your firm's marketing, you don't want to have your systems scattered across multiple platforms, which can get very annoying. You might have to, log into one platform to manage your website, another to manage your blog, another to manage your newsletter platform, another for forms. So an integrated platform allows you to manage all of these, without having to deal with a hairball of applications, which can go a long way towards streamlining your marketing efforts. Okay, well, thanks again for attending our webinar. If you have any questions about these tips, feel free to reach us through our website, amicuscreative.com, and one of our marketing consultants will get in touch with you to answer any questions you might have, and we'll also be happy to do a free website assessment for you.